here? Do you travel in daily?
Hi, my name's Chris Gosling. This is Felixstowe on Felixstowe Radio on 107.5 FM. I nearly forgot that. And today we're in Suffolk Constabulary headquarters at Martlesham, and we're talking to Superintendent Paul Sharp. Now, we're not talking to what we call really an operational policeman, because you're not feet on the ground. You are actually one of the guys who works out how to police. Is that really true?
Yes, as of the middle of December, I moved from being the area commander for Waveney and Suffolk Coastal, and have taken on the lead to implement the Suffolk Local Policing Review, which is the Constabulary's changes to local policing to meet the changing demands in terms of crime-related matters and how things have changed there, and also in relation to demands concerning the finances that the Constabulary needs to work within.
It's a really hard job, I should imagine, because working on the finances in the circumstances we are today, where the government is constantly saying, well, you can't have as much money as you had, you've got to have less money next year than you had, that must be really very difficult for everybody.
It has been very difficult, and it continues to be difficult, but over the last few years the Constabulary has been involved in a number of areas that have changed in relation to being in a position to do things differently, to try and make sure that we're as effective as we can be, so-called doing more for less. And obviously where we are now is my role is to help implement and lead the implementation of the Suffolk Local Policing Review, which will take place and go live in April of this year, and sees a change to the way local policing is delivered across Suffolk.
Let's start off by looking at Felixstowe, because we're exclusively Felixstowe, it's all we ever talk about. Tell me about how Felixstowe will be policed from the beginning of April. What will change, and how will things work?
Okay, what I'll try and do is build a picture of the sort of the layers of policing, because it's important for people to understand what that looks like. As I previously mentioned, crime types are changing, so traditional crimes are changing. We're not necessarily seeing quite as many of the traditional crime types that we have in the past. At the same time, we are seeing an increase in offences such as serious sexual offences. We're seeing issues in relation to sort of criminal use of the internet, fraud type offences taking place, people using the internet for criminal purposes, concerns around the exploitation of people, women, children in particular. And what we need to make sure is that our policing service meets the future demands. And so as a consequence, under the Suffolk Local Policing Review, first and foremost, Felixstowe will continue to have its own safer neighbourhood team and base in Felixstowe. We are working to explore opportunities with the fire service in terms of where the safer neighbourhood team base will be in Felixstowe, but there will be a safer neighbourhood team base in Felixstowe with the sergeant, the safer neighbourhood team constables and the police community support officers working from there. Going forward, the police community support officers will work and cover hours between 8 a.m. in the morning and 6 p.m. in the evening, and the safer neighbourhood team constables will work up to 10 p.m. During the week, and over the sort of the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there will be across the board police constables working to 2 a.m. Now, what we've looked at in terms of the safer neighbourhood team function is all the things that they do and do well. There's a huge number, and what the review has done, and a lot of consultation has taken place, and a lot of work has been done to sort of crunch the numbers, to look at the evidence, to make things work as best as possible. And overall, there'll be less safer neighbourhood teams, 29 down to 18 across the county. Felixstowe will have its own safer neighbourhood team area, but there will be a greater focus on 4 overarching areas of work. These are for the safer neighbourhood team to work in relation to looking at issues of vulnerability and safeguarding. For example, that could be a PCSO working with a victim of domestic violence, providing links into the organisations. The investigation will continue as it does now, but the PCSO will become more involved in that to provide help and reassurance, for example. In addition, crime reduction and is an important area. Again, for example, there could be an issue with, for example, sheds might be broken into, and the police community support officer can work with internal partners to look at ways to problem solve that, to provide advice and guidance to the person that's been the victim to prevent them being a victim in the future, and potentially help sort of target harden and prevent the offence from taking place in the future. We're also looking at ensuring that from a demand reduction point of view, a lot of work takes place with our partners. For example, we've seen a big increase in the number of mental health related issues that people suffer with. We need to work with our partners to ensure that we're effectively joined up from that perspective, so there isn't just a sort of revolving door, but actually trying to make sure that the person is given the right advice, support and guidance. That means working with partners. For quite some time we've worked successfully with Suffolk County Council and helping with the Suffolk Family Focus work, which is about dealing with sort of some of the most challenging and also needy families as well, and there's a role for the police to play within that, so it's important that we continue with that particular area as well.
We have a system here of essentially of the Safer Neighbourhood team, who kind of do, I guess the impression that I get is that the Safer Neighbourhood team have a specific role within the area, and that responses to immediate incidents are dealt with differently.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit, because that's the response team, and the response policemen are going to be moved from Felixstowe to Martlesham as their hub, working base.
That's right. Every locality in the county, there are 9 localities in the new model, and Felixstowe is part of the southeast locality. And there will be a team of response officers, neighbourhood response officers, who will work out of police headquarters as their base. Now, what's important to stress is that is a place for them to brief from, but actually with the developments in technology, with the ability to use tough books and other forms of technology, trying to ensure that officers don't need to go back to the police station. Now clearly once they've been briefed and they're out on patrol, then we want them to stay out there to be visible within the community, which is really important, so the technology will help. Likewise, we've changed the role of the response officers. At the moment, they will also, as well as dealing with emergency responses, they'll also deal with less urgent calls for service at the moment. And in the new model, that's not the case. We've freed them up so that they are able to respond, to provide an emergency response. So, for example, they will go to a report of violent crime, they'll go to an emergency, a 999 call, they'll go to the scene of a road traffic collision and help deal with that. They'll deal with high-risk missing persons. They'll take on the initial investigation for matters, but they won't necessarily be involved in sort of long, protracted investigations. What we've done is we've built other parts of the models, specifically around a neighbourhood support team function and what's known also as the Investigation Crime Management Hub. Now, there's lots of words in that, but what that's all about is identifying that when we get a call for service, we need to go through a process to assess what's the best way of dealing with it and who's best placed to deal with it. And the first part is to assess any threat or risk or relevant harm that might be associated with that particular incident, what it needs from an investigative point of view, what the vulnerability is of the person reporting, and what we can do from an engagement point of view. So if we decide that actually it comes out low risk and it's something that doesn't require a police visit, then between the Investigation and Crime Management Hub, work can be done with the victim over the telephone to investigate matters. They'll be supported by a neighbourhood support team where on occasions they'll need to go out and visit victims, but what that does is that takes away that current burden of work that's currently given to response officers. So our response officers will be out there free to deal with emergencies, and what's also important is that when they're not dealing with emergencies, that they're visible and that they're out and about and that they can be seen. That's really, really important to remember that it's not just one particular aspect of policing, but it's actually a combination of matters, that we're trying to make sure that our officers are dealing with the right things and providing the right service to individuals in the right way that provides reassurance, guidance, and emphatically shows that we're still in the community, which is really important.